Connecting 1, 2. Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and Periscope. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Friday, February 22nd, 2019. Hope you all have had a great week. Mine has been very busy. A little housekeeping before we get started. A couple things tonight. Starting to get a little bit of a sore throat, so not sure what that is, why it started this way. Picked it up around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Isn't getting any better, so probably won't go long tonight. But let's do a little housekeeping. Remember, live streams happen Monday nights at 8 p.m. and Friday nights at 8:30. If you're new to the channel, please click the little notification buttons to let you know when I go live. I'm also going to change the format to the short news. The short news is going to go out from here on out as a live stream, since I don't really edit them anyway, and I do them in one take. There's no reason for me not to try and do them as live streams. It's just easier for me to do it that way, and then that way I don't have to, actually go through the pain of taking an hour to upload the damn thing, and I actually could probably get more of them done. So look for more stuff like that coming from me in the coming days and the coming weeks. One other note, y'all know that I write for Strategic Culture Foundation. I also now just picked up a gig with my former publisher over at Newsmax, Christian Hill, at a site called moneyandmarkets.com. So I'll be writing there probably once a week as well. And there'll be links to those articles on my blog as per normal. A couple other things before we get started. Had probably the coolest experience in the last couple of years. On Tuesday at noon, or really right around 11:45, because the call started early while we set up, made sure the video and the audio was all good. I got to meet literally one of my heroes. Meeting Ron Paul for me was kind of like meeting Geddy Lee, which I have who I've not met. I did meet Tony Levin though, the great bass player. I met him one day before a show at the Meadowlands when he was playing for Peter Gabriel. That was a thrill. But meeting Ron Paul and actually getting to sit down and talk about all this stuff with a man who helped teach me all this stuff, that was truly cool. And I held it together until after the camera stopped. And before we were signing off, I had to finally just kind of like gush like a fanboy and say, look, Dr. Paul, you have no idea how important this is, how important this was to me. And it was really cool. And then of course I get done with it. I get done with everything. And Camille said, did you tell him I said hi? I'm like, no, I didn't. Then she hit me. FYI, Tuesday night I'll be on with Halsey again, and Dustin Gold. We'll do that show. That seems to be a weekly thing again. So if you guys want to tune in for that, you can. I think this week we're going to talk about. We're definitely going to do a show focused on Russia and the new Cold War. And it seems that for as long as I can stand it, the schedule for live streaming 4 nights a week is a little much for me. I don't really want to do it, but Luke Ford and company have been gracious enough to ask me to come on. I've done a couple of shows with them now. It was fun. I enjoyed it. They're great guys. It's a good talk, but there comes a point where I want to stop talking into a microphone. So, not sure how long I'm going to do that for, but I may do it not every week, but every once in a while. So, FYI. All right. So let's get on with, now that we've got some people in the chat and we're all good. And I want to thank one of my subscribers for setting everything up with Dr. Paul and Daniel McAdams for having picked up my work previously and all of that. So it's like everything else. Alex Lifeson is more impressive in many ways, yes, than Geddy Lee, because Alex is insane and he's an intuitive genius, but I'm a bass player. Right? See that Rickenbacker 4003? There's a reason why I bought that as a 17-year-old. So how did I learn how to play the bass? I put on moving pictures and I learned it. YYZ was always a little bit out of my league. Actually, it's still a little bit out of my league. It's just very odd fingering, and I've got like weird things in my right hand and muscle memory in my right hand that precludes me from playing YYZ well. And a lot of it actually has to do with, I'm figuring out now, I've been playing it a lot, I've been practicing a lot recently, has to do with just endurance. My fingers just get tired. It's a very, very difficult song to play and play well. And how Geddy plays that whole set the way he does is insane. It truly is. So, will I play for you one day? Hell no. Yeah, hell no. I don't see that as I don't see that as this happening. Certainly not with this microphone, and I don't have a setup in the room. It would be completely narcissistic. No, I have a 339. I play guitar too, but mostly I just fiddle around on guitar. I've got an Epi 339 and an Epi Wilshire Warn 66 with the mini humbuckers. It's like it's Epi's Telecaster. It's really fun. I want a Tele badly, but I don't need to spend any more money on fucking guitars. Let's just stop. So what I need to buy, Mark, you see that P bass that I just showed you, that P bass is the one I just bought. That's a Squier. It's nice. It's pretty good. I need to get me a Fender, a real one, now that I've bought a P bass, have played with it enough to understand how it works, why it is the way it is, and the fact that I like it. And I like it better now than a Rickenbacker. It fits my hand better. It fits my small hands better. I'll be buying a really nice Fender PJ setup P bass in I don't know about the near future. Well, with the new gig with Money Markets, it'll be sooner rather than later. Let's put it that way. All right, let's get started. The title of the talk tonight, which I just put together literally 30 seconds before we started, is China Trade and the End of Post-World War II Europe. So if you read the blog over at tomluongo.me this week, you know that I've written a lot, and Strategic Culture. You know I've written a lot about the Munich Security Conference and Angela Merkel's speech and all of that stuff. And I want to talk about that stuff. And I want to talk about it in terms of the trade talks going on between China and the Trump administration right now. Now, I know you guys, if you follow my work at all, and I know most of you do, you know that I don't see the Trump administration instituting 25% tariffs in 6 days. I just don't. They don't have the leverage. Trump is asking for it. This is Trump's typical big ask stuff, and he's not going to do it. If he was going to do it, he would have not backed off back in December. He would have never backed off back in December. He would have allowed the stock market to continue to crash, and we would have moved on. If he was really serious about this, if he was really, truly committed to the idea that he was going to balance trade through tariffs with China. It's insane. What Trump is doing with all of this tariff stuff, and I know a lot of you MAGA types, if you're still around, are going to be angry with me, as you always are whenever we discuss trade, because you don't want to admit that the problem with the United States and trade, world trade, is here at home, not everywhere else. It's not China that's the problem. It's the United States that's the problem. Donald Trump is running a $1.2 trillion deficit on the verge of a global recession. And China soaks up between 500 and 600 billion of that a year. Not directly now, because they don't just buy treasury bonds and stuff them in their reserves like they used to. Not directly, but indirectly. Some of it's indirect, some of it, and a lot of it is laundered back off. A lot of it is just recycled back out and just used to pay for stuff in dollars around the world, and they don't accumulate that money in their foreign exchange reserves anymore. And so it never really truly hits the yuan, so they don't manage the onshore yuan, Chinese yuan exchange rate from that perspective. I mean, they do. Everybody manipulates their exchange rate. Let's get one thing clear. The United States calling anybody a currency manipulator is for legal purposes only. That opens up certain that activates certain legislation that allows us to do various things. The overarching issue is not IP theft. The overarching issue is a $600 billion trade deficit. The IP theft, or however you want to term it, is another symptom of a deeper problem, which is that at the end of the day, technology wants to be open. And that closed source technology, patent law, IP law, and the rest of it, is an unsustainable thing. And governments cannot protect, over time, cannot protect quote unquote nationally strategically secure technology over time. If you don't want your network to be secure, unplug it from the wall. Okay? So at the end of the day, understand that it is ultimately the corporations who are in charge here. It's ultimately Apple and and Qualcomm and Cisco and Intel and everybody else. It's them that have to safeguard their technology. And Trump wants that all built here in the United States. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen while he runs a $1.2 trillion deficit, constantly making everything more expensive here in the United States to do business. Yes, he's cut the corporate tax rate. Yes, he's done things to try and improve internal capital handling here in the United States. Absolutely. Has he tried to cut regulations and red tape? Yes, he has. Is the government still spending $4+ trillion a year? Yeah. So all that red tape hasn't translated into less spending. Okay? That 4% GDP number that he loves to talk about so much. Easy to get more GDP when you spend more money and you put it off on everybody else to maintain their interest and effectively shake everybody down to buy all that debt that you're issuing in order to keep their exchange rates and their currencies from collapsing as well. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So Trump doesn't understand how to run a world's reserve currency. He never has. And he never will. And he's not about to put us back on the freaking gold standard. And he's not about to, do any of the things that he's not. And the other thing, he's just not willing to actually fight the fights that need to be fought, which is to stop spending fucking money. At the end of the day, if you want your balance sheet to improve, you stop spending money and you pay down and you stop accruing debt and you start paying it off. And then you're no longer generating wealth to pay for the interest on the debt. You're generating income to pay off what you've already pulled forward in time. You have to understand what debt is. That's not just some nebulous concept that sits in the corner. Debt is pulling forward future production to today because you think that you can outrun future, you can get a higher rate of return today than that capital would get in the future. That's why you do it. So the issue here is that we're beginning to fall behind in the very important 5G technology. We've already fallen behind in 5G. Huawei is ahead of us. That's why Trump is so angry, but he's angry on other levels too. He goes over to China. I just watched the Grand Tour episode where they went to China. Do you see the roads that they're building in China? Do you see the infrastructure they've built? I'm not saying that that these roads aren't roads to nowhere. Many of them are. But the point is that they've built an unbelievable amount of arteries across that country to service 1.2 billion people. I don't think Americans really, even I don't, have an idea of the scale of how things have changed. It's insane. It's truly insane, and it's truly of a scale that we cannot fathom. While we sit here doing the exact same, I mean, everywhere I look, when I go around, everywhere I look looks the same in the United States. The United States doesn't look dynamic. I see the Rust Belt falling apart, and all I see is the capital being shuffled around, but I don't see it growing. The capital stock is not growing. It hasn't grown. Real wages relative to the stock market haven't grown. So there's no wealth being generated here. There's just financial gearing. I was having this discussion on Luke Fort's show last night. I said, it's interesting. I said, we have we supposedly have this $18 trillion economy. It's the biggest in the world, everything else. But, pull out the financialization. Pull out all the leverage. How big is it? How much wealth is actually being generated? How much of it is actually productive capacity being utilized? And a lot of it just gross national spending based on deficit spending and financial leverage. So I hear a lot from the American right about the quality of Chinese construction. I hear all these things, Ryu and Stoyanov. I hear all of this stuff, right? And I'm not saying that they're brilliant at it or anything. Okay, I hear this stuff all the time. They are a massive amount of malinvestment. There's no argument. As an Austrian, I'm completely flabbergasted by the situation. I'm in complete agreement with all of you. But I don't think you understand the scale. If they've built 20 fucking cities that are full of people and they built one city that isn't, don't look at the one city and ignore the other 20. Okay? That's the part you have to understand. Okay, I think Americans love to do this. They want to believe that China's just a big Ponzi scheme. I know David Stockman calls it the red Ponzi. And I agree at a certain level, it's all a big Ponzi scheme. But the capital's moving there, not here. And Trump isn't doing anything to help the United States change the direction at where capital is flowing. You cannot, on the one hand, say, hey, we're going to cut corporate taxes and we're going to cut regulation and then we're going to increase spending. And if you don't go along with everything I say, I'm going to sanction you and I'm not going to let you trade with us. Are you out of your fucking mind? Do you guys actually think that this is the way you think that you would run a business with a guy like this in charge? I got news for you. No. Exactly. You know what happened with all the money with the tax holiday and the lowering? You know what happened? They handed it back to the workers. They handed it back to the shareholders and said, you guys figure it out. We ain't putting money into our businesses because we have no idea what's going to come down the pike in 2 years. Trump may last 4 years. I already don't like what he's doing. And then he could get thrown out of office and the Democrats could take over and nationalize all of it. The investment's not happening. Stoyanovich, it is malinvestment if they use shoddy materials. Okay? Because they don't have an incentive to use good materials. Malinvestment covers a big rubric. It's not just investing in something that's not sustainable. Well, it is. I mean, and quality of construction is something else. So that's the dynamic. That's the trend. You can't just, I mean, I argue this stuff with my conservative friends all the time, and that's their first argument. I'm like, okay, well then, how are we just talking to each other today? On our iPhones, which are made, much of which is made here in the United States, and some of it isn't, and a lot of it is assembled in China. But I got news for you: China makes their own phones. Huawei doesn't make their chips here in the United States, send them back to China to assemble them there. Okay, Apple may make the A12 here, but so what? Huawei, Xiaomi, they make their chips locally. And that's what Trump is worried about. Trump is worried that we're going to lose the edge in technology. We're going to lose the edge at that level. And I share his concerns on that level. But as president, you can't just mandate to the world, use our stuff because China sucks. It doesn't work that way. As Thordoom pointed out earlier in the chat, Germany and Japan are already bucking the whole 5G ban thing, right? No, it's Germany and the UK. They're going to use Huawei's 5G, which gets me back to the title of the talk, which is the end of the post-World War II institutional order. Germany put the world on notice on Monday via Angela Merkel that Germany is done taking edicts from the United States. Javier, they cannot build processors. ARM is from the UK. The ARM cores are UK. A lot of them have design licenses. If they're using just Octa A53 cores, yeah, well, no, that's not interesting. If they're developing their own cores with a design license, that's a different story. There's two types of ARM licenses. There's block license, and then there's design licenses. This I know about, right? AMD, for example, has a design license. They don't use it for much other than internal stuff. They haven't built anything that they've sold commercially with their design license, but they have a design license. So does Qualcomm. So did Apple, right? You do realize that Huawei is making their own chips from the ground up on the 5G technology. You do realize that we're not talking about just buying ARM cores to run servers, right? We're talking about that's not what's going on here. So and they do build the processors. All ARM does is design them. Someone actually has to build the fabs. The fabs are in Taiwan. The fabs are in China. The fabs are the fabs, right? In product lifecycle terms, says WDM, the U.S. is in the mature harvest stage. The big players are taking the chips off the table, harvesting the fruits and investments over the years. In effect, yes, WDM, I agree with you. That's exactly where we are. We're in the late stage. We've become a cash cow, for lack of a better, you call it harvest. But it really is. We're in the harvest phase. We're in the cash cow phase. Can we just milk this thing for as much cash as we can get out of it? And then once we're done with it, the money's going to move. Thordu, Merkel's speech was very telling that Germany will work with Russia. Trump already lost that battle, and with his stupidity, he pushed Europe closer to China and Russia even faster than it would have happened. Exactly. Now you know that I've been saying this for, 3 years now, or 2.5 years now. I was like, what is he doing? All he's going to do is push Germany closer to Russia faster. At some point, if he doesn't stop pushing about Nord Stream 2 and start trying to figure out ways to make Germany happy, as opposed to treating them like the houseboy. I mean, honestly, he treats the Germans like his pool boy. Okay? And she's had enough of it. And Merkel rightly has had enough of it. So moving on to Germany and moving on to what Merkel was talking about. Now, you guys know I'm no fan of Merkel. Yes, Ryu, this is part of the reason of the talk, that we are a collapsing empire and we will fail, and Russia and China will be the new superpowers. Absolutely. Germany is an occupied country. Absolutely it is. This is the only reason why they continue to kind of put up with us, because we still have our troops stationed inside their country. This is ultimately why Macron and Merkel want a European army, because at that point it obviates the need for NATO. Trump keeps talking about, why are you doing business with Russia if we're in NATO alliance to protect you from Russia? That doesn't make any sense. It's because we're not in NATO, because NATO doesn't exist to defend against Russia. You jackass. That ended in 1991, and you fucking know it, Orange Obama. NATO still exists so the United States can put political pressure on Europe to do what it wants in Asia and in South America and in Africa. That's what it's for. That's what NATO is for. NATO is an occupying force. Nothing more, nothing less. And a big slush fund for politically connected Europeans to ensure that they get paid to do what we want them to do. And he should know this. That's why Rio is moving to the moon. Well, you know, within 5 years, Rio, the Russians will put you in near Earth orbit. Which is, I don't know if you guys saw that or not, right? That the Russians are, no, it's not hopeless. You just have to realize what the situation is, Daryl. It's not hopeless. You just have to understand that the United States' best days are behind them. And the point is that Trump had an opportunity to end this process now and get us closer to the rebuilding stage and not hit so hard. Because look, China doesn't want us to collapse. Russia doesn't want us to collapse. Okay, this is a false premise. Okay, they don't want us to collapse because it will not be easy for them if we collapse. Everybody will be harmed when the United States collapses. Everybody will be harmed when Europe collapses. Japan collapses. The United States collapses. China's going to mini collapse in the process. It's not going to be easy on China. A lot of people are going to be revealed to be swimming naked all around the world when the sovereign debt crisis really starts to unfold, without a doubt. But Trump had an opportunity here to make nice with people, to cut deals, to stop seeing the United States as nothing but a dispensational force for good in grand baby boomer tradition. His job was to come in here and say nuts to all that, to cut deals, make nice with Russia, make deals with China, let Germany and the EU go their own way, and protect American interest. And he's not doing that. He's cut deals with the neocons to go right back to what we've been doing for the last 40 years, which he's done nothing but complain about publicly. And now he's a worse version of George W. Bush than George W. Bush was. Dude, if you're already terraforming Mars, you're only doing so via the board game every, in your home. So, Putin is already presenting Russia as the literal bridge-building nation that connects Asia with Europe, says Thordoom. Never threatens anyone, always ready to talk and negotiate. This is the role of the new Russia. Of course, Russia understands, Putin understands that you don't attract flies with vinegar, but with honey. And you walk softly and you carry a big stick. And he's got the biggest sticks on the planet right now, short of massive nuclear weapons. Right? Short of our MIRVs, which likely no one has a counter to. And no one wants to ever see fired, which is why they never will be fired. We are where we are. But Trump has turned all of this into a very ugly state all of a sudden. And he doesn't want Germany to hook up with the Russians. Well, he's doing a bang-up job of forcing them into it. So, would the U.S. government and media have allowed him to do any different? Likely not. But, at the end of the day, just because you're not allowed to do something doesn't mean you're not supposed to still stand there and fight for what's right. But Donald Trump doesn't have a right and a wrong. Donald Trump is amoral. And I've just come to the conclusion that Donald Trump is an amoral douchebag. All right? So, that's it. Elva Carroll, I had the flu and was bored, dug into what the cartels have been up to and into the vegan world. It kind of makes me want the collapse to hit. Dude, I'm sorry. When I'm sick, I watch cartoons. And I stop looking at this shit while I'm sick. So... The Americans have been, so Mark Bogosian, the Americans have been pushing feisty entrepreneurs out of the country for the last 20 years. That is very true. But how is that going to help them reform themselves for the next century? It's not. We have to collapse. We are collapsing. We're collapsing culturally. We're collapsing philosophically. We're collapsing in an identity sense. We've become ultra fragile, not anti-fragile. We want safe spaces and diversity training and sensitivity training. We don't want people to deal with adversity, bear their burdens, and move on with dignity. Right? Let's do the Jordan Peterson thing real quick. Look at what we're doing. Right? The rugged American spirit. That's Jussie Smollett. Come on. Ridiculous. This is where we are today. Okay? This is where we are. And that's the trend. And that's going to hit rock bottom before it gets better. Trump and his lackeys do not realize that the biggest weapon the Russians have is the ability to talk virtually to everyone. U.S. is unable to negotiate, therefore they can't win in the end. They can only lose. Yes. Yeah, I think we've talked about this at length, Thordoom, that Trump doesn't have any diplomats. He has people who yell at people, who make pronouncements and dictates, but he doesn't actually engage in any diplomacy. Because he doesn't engage in any diplomacy, because he doesn't actually talk to anybody, he tried for a few months and then nobody listened to him. So now he's just, look, Donald Trump has made it abundantly clear that when someone doesn't give him what he wants, he then roots for their failure. Okay? Loyalty is very important to him. And loyalty, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, is do what I say, or you're disloyal. So we're going to leave 400 peacekeepers in Syria. We're going to leave all our logistical support there. We're going to still bomb. We're going to still fly F-16s around and bomb people. We're going to still protect ISIS in Deir ez-Zor, in and around Deir ez-Zor. We're going to keep our guys at the border crossing at Al-Tanf. All of these things are contra to what needs to be done. What needs to be done is for the United States to leave completely, go home. At that point, Iran will go home. Russia will settle up everybody else. Hezbollah will settle into political life in Lebanon, and the Israelis will have to suck it. Their plans failed. We just don't want to admit that we failed in Syria. I don't know if you guys saw the news, but Netanyahu is going to be seeing sincere opposition in the upcoming elections next year, or in April. So, two of the minor parties are getting together and they're campaigning together, and they're going to be running opposite to Netanyahu to try and get rid of him, to change the focus. Yes, Venezuela proves all of this perfectly, that Trump doesn't engage in diplomacy. He dictates, if you don't do what we want you to do, we're going to just destroy your country. Trump is a sad figure, really, says RB Tools from Down Under. He may have had an agenda, but it was whipped out of him very quickly. A reality show, TV show host could only ever rise to the highest level of public office in a disjointed nation like the United States. All right, he demands loyalty but gives none in return. Stan, that's brilliant. Because what did he do? He turned on all of his people. All the people who were loyal to him. Roger Stone, threw him under the bus. Paul Manafort, threw him under the bus. Michael Cohen, threw him under the bus. As Dustin and I were talking about the other night. Michael Cohen, I barely know the guy. He was only in the office next to yours for 20 years, Don. Paul Manafort, no, I barely know the guy. I just used him for 6 weeks. Yeah, you've known him for 40 fucking years. Ann Coulter, I barely know her. She's not that important. Yeah, bullshit. She's got, you know, she's been to Mar-a-Lago as an honored guest. How many fucking times? As she said, the only national emergency right now is that our president is an idiot. It's not the number of troops, Rocket Man, that's important. Okay, it's the fact that they're still going to be there, and the other 1,600 are just going to be restationed in Iraq. They're not coming home. Netanyahu will be sitting in jail if he loses. That's, I think, what's going on here. And then, so I don't know about the whole Trump needs a war to make himself seem presidential. That's not the Democrats are doing nothing to put themselves in a position to win in 2020 at this point. They have turned so far to the left, it doesn't make any sense. So, Ryu, Trump is a damn yellow belly, Tom. Like, I know, he's a coward. I said this 4 months ago and got yelled at by well, not by you good folks, but everybody who's not here. They all yelled at me. I said, what, are you kidding? Trump's not a coward. He's the man. He's Jesus. He's going to save us all, and it's not your fair, and you're being mean, and fuck off. Just fuck off. Come on. I mean, so ML Printer, Tom, I mean, the U.S. has won the geographical lottery with respect to economic significance and relative safety from conventional military attack. I see the real black pill as the present pause, which I still don't understand the use of that word. May take more than 80 years to deflate. It's going to take a while. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. There's still plenty of meat on the corpse for the zombies to eat here in the United States. But you know, so what? At the end of the day, Trump has made it clear that Germany is going to become an ally of the Russians and the Chinese. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, hold your nose for 5 years, says James, and hope someone else will be groomed. It's still better than Hillary Clinton. It's better than Hillary Clinton simply because we don't have to look at Hillary. We don't have to listen to Hillary Clinton every day. You know, Trump at this point is just a sad, pathetic loser. And that's better than the, you know, insufferable fucking Hillary. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just purely as optics, right? What's actually worse is that I have to, you know, I have to admit to the fact that I voted for the guy. Oh well, you know, not all purchases are good. Sometimes you buy something, you're like, what the fuck did I buy this? And you throw it out. Yeah, you and me both, Ryu. Ryu says, I want to backhand the orange bastard. No lie. I was there the day after the midterms. So I was like, fuck off. I mean, seriously, let's not talk about it. Yeah, by leaving the troops in Syria, the U.S. ensures that Turkey is going to now work in cooperation with Russia and China. He's like making it easy on Erdogan. Erdogan, by the way, came out and said today, oh, we're not taking a dime from the IMF. My greatest achievement as president was to pay off all of our IMF debt and never, ever take a dime. While I'm president, we will never take a dime from the IMF. You know what that says, don't you? That says, Trump, fuck you, where you're not using Turkey. You're not going to destroy Turkey from within anymore. You're not going to, the whole institutional order is breaking down. Turkey just said no to IMF money. I got news for you. Pakistan is going to wind up saying no to IMF money. So the Chinese are just going to hand it to them. So, well, I'm not voting until something better comes along. I ain't voting for anybody in 2020. I'm just going back to my default position. Don't vote. It only encourages them. I mean, you guys have to understand, as Americans, we're culpable for all this shit. Okay? You know how we all, like the world went nuts and, you know, blamed all the Germans for the horrible shit the Germans did? Well, I got news for you. That's coming for Americans in the next 20 years. Okay? That's coming. Because once the capital leaves and ensconces itself over in the west, in the east, if we go to war with anyone at this point, there's going to be a whole lot of military trying. There's going to be a whole lot of national shame and a whole lot of shunning. It's already here. I mean, we're already not liked around the world. What do I think of Tulsi Gabbard? I like Gabbard, right? I think she's an honest anti-war candidate, and I've said that before. I've done a couple of videos on her. I've written about her, and I love the idea that she's in the race, and I want her to make waves within the Democratic Party. I want someone to save one of these two fucking parties from the warmongering neocons, and I want somebody to stand up and call a spade and call out exactly what Ron Paul called out in 2008 and 2012. That's the empire is the fucking problem, and the troops not only need to come home, but we need to stop listening to these neoconservatives on the right and neoliberals on the left. And she's absolutely right. She uses both words, and she's not supposed to. These are the two words you're not supposed to use in polite company. So, well, then vote for Trump in 2020, Ryu, because the way he's going, he's absolutely going to collapse the system faster. Because everything he's doing is only accelerating, is putting gasoline on the fire is putting gasoline on the coals that are already in process. They're already hot as fuck. Seriously, you can't run a $1.2 trillion deficit in the face of the oldest, longest expansion, no matter how weak it is, in history, and expect at record level, at record unemployment, record low unemployment, all that. That's all late stage stuff. The business cycle has to turn. It's a business cycle. It's not a linear thing. As much as the central banks want to sell us on this idea that they can give us prosperity forever, no, it's bullshit. Business cycle. Malinvestment must be purged. Oh, I agree that I think they'll destroy her. There's no argument that they're absolutely that she won't get any traction. And if she does get any traction, she's only going to get traction outside of the Democratic Party. And now the question is, does she have the moral courage to be vilified and leave the Democratic Party and run an insurgency campaign from outside of it? Or does she like being in Washington too much? See, I think she's running for, in some ways, it's like everything else. I think she's running for president in 2024. Right? That's what I think. North on 60, you should be very concerned about how ugly the empire will get as it goes down. Look at what we have. Look who we have as president at this point, and look what they're doing in the foreign policy front. That's pretty ugly. This is as ugly as it gets. A wounded animal lashes out as it bites everyone. Yep. I mean, Martin Armstrong talked about this years ago. I've been talking about it for a long time, that when the system starts to collapse, it's going to be the most dangerous time is when the institutional order is changing. When you're in the transition state. Transition states are violent, right? As a chemist, I talk about this all the time. There's you're at ground state, and then you have to pass through a transition state, right, which is higher energy, and there's a massive reorganization to get to a lower new ground state, right? So you start here, you go up to a new transition state, and then you drop precipitously to the new state, right? That this current state is not the final ground state. There's another lower order. There's another more highly ordered or highly disordered system down below on the other side. But you always have to add energy to get everything to reorganize before they can reorganize, and the bonds can be broken and changed, and then we can get to this other thing over here. Every chemical reaction goes through a transition state like this. Some of those energy barriers are negligible. Sometimes they're spontaneous, and other times they're not. And in politics and in human interactions, it's exactly the same way. We have policy inertia, and that creates that tension and that transition state. And we're in that transition state now. It's starting to get violent. I'll be happy to see it, Elva Caro. Send it to my email address. Trump is the last gasp of the empire. It's not the deficit, it's the $220 trillion present value of the unfunded liabilities. Oh yeah, we didn't. Yeah, no, Mark, I'm not unhip to that as well. It's the structural deficit now, the budget deficit now is only putting gasoline on that fire. Because as you add more debt to that, you can't possibly dig yourself, you're making it even that much harder to possibly ever dig yourself out of the thing that you're in. And no one is going to help you if you won't reform yourself. That's the thing. Russia and China and Germany and all these countries would have helped us. It's, oh, I remember that one. Buy the National Lampoon cover. Buy this magazine or we'll shoot this dog. Yeah, well, there you go. What are the odds that the U.S. will launch nukes as it goes down? Seriously concerned about this. I can't answer that question. I wish I could, but I can't. If inflation isn't permitted and the electricity doesn't go out, it's just more of the same. Tom, it is very dangerous because on one side we have sane leaders like Xi and Putin, and on the other side we have a weak appeaser who doesn't read shit, who believes in the empire, i.e. Trump. Yeah, it is a very dangerous, volatile situation. And he's also retributive to the extreme. It's not just that he likes to watch people he doesn't like fail. Like, wait, the next time Ann Coulter writes a book and it doesn't hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, he will tweet out about it. He will be mean about it. Why? Because he can't help himself. Because he's a fucking child. No, the entitlements have to be renegotiated. The pensions all have to be rebuked. The whole thing is a mess. But it can't happen. But when you're throwing gasoline on the fire, that's going to ensure that assets deflate even faster by creating a dollar supercycle high, because the demand for dollars is just going to go through the roof while people try to figure out what the fuck to do. When capital starts, I mean, in broad terms, when capital's already scared shitless, right? You know, we're not going to see a weak dollar we're not going to see a weak dollar. It's going to be a strong dollar. It's already a strong dollar. It's not about alliances, James. It's about realizing your vulnerabilities and realizing that the people who you think are the problem is with imperial thinking is that once you start down the path of, so am I, Mark. Once being scared shitless, once you start down the path of empire and you realize that you're unsustainable, and you realize you become paranoid. When the only way to maintain your power is to use that power. See, it's one thing to have power and not use it. You rise to the top of the quote-unquote dominance hierarchy, in this case, in humans said the competence hierarchy, and you have power, but you don't use it. Right? You just have the power, but you don't use it. The minute you make the turn from that into an imperial mindset where you have power, in order to maintain that power, you have to use it. You have to now push down everyone around you. You know what the reaction is. The reaction is when you use power, people scurry away from it and they become disobedient. You may get obedience here, but you're always going to get people, you may get public obedience, but you're going to get private disobedience, right? So that is what always happens to empires. They become paranoid. Look at John Bolton. He's a paranoid schizophrenic. Right? Everything is about seeing everybody as your enemy. That once that starts, everyone becomes your enemy. Even your trading partners become your enemy because now they're not good enough. They're not genuflecting enough. Now they're not pure enough. It's the same. It always ends in a pogrom. Always. It always ends in people being lined up behind the chemical shed and shot in the fucking head, metaphorically or physically. Always. And right now, Trump is taking everybody who disagrees with him out behind the chemical shed and shooting them and trying to shoot them in the head. The unfortunate part about it is he's looking at his gun and it's full of rubber bullets. Ryu, Tom, in your educated opinion, how long does the Russian and Chinese empire stay at the top until they fuck up too? Oh God, please, man. Honestly, Ryu, I could care less. I won't be here to see it. It's 2019. I'm 51 years old. You figure by, what, 2032, 2035, China should probably be in charge of the world, so I'll be 65. I got news for you, dude. At 65, if I haven't made myself independently wealthy at that point, that I can just sit around and play fucking board games all day and hang out with my wife and play with my grandkids, then I've done something seriously fucking wrong. I don't know. I mean, just I mean, I like to do this job until I'm 70 or 75 years old. I don't know that you guys want to be talking to me at 70, 75 years old. I'm really going to be a crank at that point, and I'm almost positively have been unpersoned by that point. So, when I saw the video of McCabe saying that Trump said during a meeting that he wants war with Venezuela because they are close to the U.S. and they have all that oil. I believe that absolutely. Yeah, he wants energy dominance. He wants to control all the, he wants control of the marginal barrel of oil. The empire functions to draw wealth to the center using force. Yes. He wasn't the first one to tell this story. Trump is absolutely a warmonger. The problem is, of course, yes, you get diminishing returns. It's malinvestment. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to spend more money than you have to spend more to bring that to create, to get that. It costs more to bring it back, and you don't realize it because it doesn't matter, because everybody's getting fed. The individuals are getting fed, but the country as a whole is getting screwed. The Chinese housing bubble is going. It's not a matter of that the Chinese aren't going to go through a recession between now and 2032 or 2035. That's not the point. They're going to. There's going to be a big burst that's going to happen in China. So what? So what? That doesn't mean that they're not going to, that at the end of the day, they're not going to wind up being the destination, because they are. It's coming. Russia isn't acting like an empire. That's true. The Soviet Union acted like an empire because they were suffused with Marxism, which is fundamentally imperial, leads to imperial thinking. It's over 1,000 years old. On present course, it will be here for thousands more, most likely. I don't see a U.S. invasion of Venezuela. Maduro won't be toppled. I agree. Guaido is a CIA muppet. The force is strong with me, young gentleman. I young at heart, dude. But, you know, the body breaks down. Would that be you? Don't be surprised if you make a fortune, then the man comes and takes it all away. And guess who turns 65 next time? Would that be you, Mark? If so, I've heard parts of your story. You have no idea how much sympathy I have for you. Right, the Russians let the cat. I love the fact that the Russians let the cat out of the bag and said, "Oh, the false flag is going to happen on the 23rd." Like, everybody at the State Department and the CIA are going, "Fuck, fuck." MI6 is going, "Fuck." And Mossad's going, "Yeah, go ahead and do it anyway." Yeah, we'll see. It's funny. John Bolton is an Israeli official. He's also just paranoid schizophrenic. All right. Oy. This has been a lively one. I'm tired. It's been a hell of a day. We're on the same page. I am tired. And I need to go lay down. So I'm going to cut it off early tonight, guys. Good talk, as always. Really enjoyed it. We'll be back on Monday. One thing, North on 60. Soviet Union was a blip in the context of Russian history. That is not their ethos, and they learned a horrible lesson not to be repeated. Yeah, well, Marxism does strange things to people's brains. And it's going to get worse from here. So, all right. You guys take care. You have a great weekend. We will talk soon on Monday at 8 o'clock, as always. So, if you like what you heard tonight, like and subscribe down below. You guys know the drill. You talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.